Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, colleagues here in the room and people online. I hope everybody can hear us well and we don't have any technical glitches. So thank you very much for coming and welcome to everyone. This morning we would like to have a session on the dialogue on plastic pollution and environmentally sustainable plastic trade. As you know, this dialogue started 2 years ago, and not any time, 2 years ago, if I may say, in 2020, exactly during the second Environment Week. So this marks a little bit of anniversary today, and I think it shows a little bit the importance of this session that we organize called as Environment Week, because it's really a good way to mobilize, I would say, energy around certain topics. And this is what happened 2 years ago. And since then, the energy, I must say, has grown stronger and stronger in this dialogue. And the energy has come very much from members, and they have been very, very active and proactive on this topic. But I must say the energy has also come very strongly from other stakeholders. And it's one of the particularities of this dialogue is how much it has managed to involve stakeholders from the beginning, from the start of this discussion. This is not meant, the involvement of stakeholders was not done as a kind of an afterthought and okay, let's not forget stakeholders type of approach, but really from the start, they have helped members to tailor the agenda, to provide really excellent expertise that was needed, because WTO members were working and discussing here in this place are trade officials. So to have this expertise from a various set of stakeholders was absolutely essential in order to be able to really move, make good progress on this topic. So I must commend the excellent coordination and cooperation that has taken place over the last 2 years with the stakeholders that we have the chance to have today with us this morning, with the international organization that we have this morning. I would also mention the fact that we got quite a nice additional push at MC12 last June to continue in this direction of discussing and making progress. To take the word of DGG program from yesterday, members are driving faster and faster, and I think particularly in this dialogue, this has shown the energy that went into it, and the work that has been done is quite amazing in the short time space that we are looking at. This cooperation and this coordination has also been crystallized in the ministerial statement from 2021, the December 21 ministerial statement between these members of this group, and again at MC12 as well, in the result that we're highlighting in another ministerial statement. So really congratulations to this set of members, and congratulations to the international organizations present today. I think this would not have happened in such an efficient way without your very precious coordination. So the objective of this event, apart from this anniversary, I think, spirit that should animate us, is to look back at the positive collaboration that has taken place between the WTO process and the related processes under the international organizations that are present with us. And I would say most importantly, to try to identify the way forward and to find opportunities, identify opportunities to build on this very unique cooperation, to try and outline and find further concrete possible results in support of these efforts on plastic to end plastic pollution. In other words, first, let's look at what has worked well, and let's try to identify what more can be done. To start our discussion this morning, I have the pleasure to have the Deputy Director General Jean-Marie Pogam. who is with us this morning. Thank you very much for being here. As you know, I will, in order to organize this discussion, I will ask to each moderator a generic question, but please feel free to answer in the best and in relation to your particular expertise. So. Jean-Marie, the WTO Secretary has a standing mandate to collaborate with trade and environment-related work undertaken by other international organizations. Could you please speak a little bit about how you see the role of the WTO and of the Secretariat in particular in supporting the key ongoing international efforts to end plastics pollution, being how the way it is being highlighted today? Jean-Marie, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ludivine. Good morning, everyone. Ludivine, you were kindly reminding that I was encouraging members to drive fast, and I got a lot of questions about that since yesterday. Some of these questions were: is he talking about an electric car, you know, that type of thing? So I just think that the plastic discussion can be an opportunity to clarify. I think that this plastic initiative is a drive fast initiative in itself, and the reason why. Is that we have three key components which make it move quite positively and fast. The first one is that we are dealing with a clear and focused issue. We have some quite precise knowledge of the phenomenon that we're talking about. It's about 380 million tons of plastics. It is worth 1 trillion trade. These are the big numbers, big mass. We know that this 1 trillion represent both a threat, because this is mostly waste and a danger, but also an opportunity because it's a market for alternatives to plastic. It's also an opportunity for businesses because a lot of it is waste, so they could reduce those waste and make more money out of using the material better. So I think we have a rather circumscribed issue. We also identify from a trade policy perspective in the WTO that many of our members are moving to take action on this issue. We count 65 members moving now, and roughly those 65 members have been taking 250 measures. So we have a list of trade policy measures. A lot of them have to do with ban on single-use plastic, which is, I think, the most evident policy if you want to visualize what we can do on plastic. So, but the first point why it's a fast driving issue is that it's clear. Second, we have, I think, what I may call a dream team. The dream team is a team first of agencies. Most of them are here at this table, and we are joining hands. UNEA is leading, of course, with the negotiation of a global treaty, but we are also trying to bring the trade component together with WCO, UNCTAD, in an inclusive manner with development perspective, and of course UNEP and the Basel Convention, which is already regulating part of this trade. Second, the team of our members is really exemplary too. Through the coordinators who have developed and developing countries, we have Australia, China, Ecuador, but also in the composition of the initiative, plastic is really a federating issue, a unifying issue, not a dividing one. There are not so many in this organization, and I think it's very interesting because this helps bring energy together. And last, of course, you mentioned it, Ludivine, the stakeholders who are playing a very important role in providing inputs, analysis, and ideas for this. Focused issue, dream team. The last element is a deadline. We just have this deadline with our next ministerial meeting, MC13, where I quote, we want to achieve concrete, pragmatic, and effective outcome. So how do we go there? I guess this is what we really want to try to progress on with this panel. I think there are three lines of thoughts that we can follow, or we are already following. The first one is, as usual, fact-finding transparency. We have to document this phenomenon. It's not completely well known. I gave the broad figures at the beginning, but we all know that the trade flow include a lot of sunken plastic or hidden plastic. For instance, in the trade of a car, we know that 40% is plastic. So when you trade a car, you trade 40% plastic, but you do not capture that. I think Ricardo knows that much better than me, because part of it has to do with how do you accommodate the HS. HS means harmonized system of tarification to capture those flows. So that's transparency of trade flow, mapping of trade policy initiatives. We are doing that into the WTO. I was referring to it. We need to improve and increase the scope of our mapping, and this is also a way to identify needs for technical assistance in the countries which will need them. And of course, the dialogue itself, which is in those rooms that we are in, generating a lot of information. We are going to try to capture this information and put it together in a global portal about plastic policies. So fact-finding transparency is one. Second, capacity building. We, as you know, are running a survey of the needs and the policies which are being implemented by our members. This survey by itself is a capacity building exercise, because we just realize that sometimes in the capitals, it pushes members to coordinate between ministries, which did not have necessarily a lot of habit of coordination, because this issue of plastic is cross-cutting and it's not only a trade issue by definition. Second, we have been, this is an important development of this dialogue. Dialogue has been identifying a lot of regional and bilateral financing mechanism which can contribute to the fight against plastic. So we need to try to bridge or to connect our identifications of the needs in technical assistance and the sources of financing which can help this capacity. So transparency, capacity building. The third one, and I think this one is really something that we need to think hard about with a vision of MC13, is action taking. What is the action? What is the kind of outcomes that we want to show to civil society in 1 year in terms of movement, actual movement to get rid of plastic? And here I have some maybe personal thinking. Members, excuse me if I share those personal thoughts, but the traditional thinking of this organization is, first we need to have a perfect definition. So this will take us very long time. What is a plastic? What is an alternative to plastic? And it's very complicated. So we can. Second, we need to gather critical mass, because if we do not have a critical mass, we cannot have an agreement. And third, we need to balance concession, because if the concession are not balanced, you can. I think we are talking here about the public good. We can think differently. We do not need to wait for the perfect definition of an alternative to plastic. We need to identify some alternative to plastic. I inspire myself. I think that was one of the members here who was suggesting, can we just identify 3 or 4 alternatives to single-use plastic? That's already a start. You don't need to have a conceptual systemic definition of an alternative to plastic. You can identify 2 or 3 products. Then we'll bring them to Ricardo to see where they fit in the HA's code. And then some members can take action on those alternatives to plastic. Action, does it need to be 164 members who just want to take action on this alternative? No, it can be the start of a coalition of willing. Some people have labeled it a race to the top. Can we have commitments which are adding up to one another and starting to get rid of this plastic? This is a kind of dynamic of thinking that I think would help reach some new dynamic, new results, and which could change the landscape of how trade is contributing to eliminating this pollution in the future. So this is my input for a start to your question, Ludivine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Marie. Very inspiring, and it does give us a nice way of starting this discussion. So in a way that there are no boundaries, so we can really try to think a bit creatively and with one goal at hand is to achieve a result. So thank you very much for this. And to use your words, I'm happy now to continue the discussion with inviting members of the Dream Team to contribute to this discussion now. We do have someone online. Okay, perfect. So maybe I put this so I can see who I'm talking to. Miss Jyoti, I hope you're online and you can hear us. I see you, perfect. So first of all, let me congratulate you on your selection as a new Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee Secretariat, who is going to support the global negotiations towards a new internationally legally binding instrument to end plastic pollution. So thank you very much and good luck with this really challenging role. As all of you, I believe, know, and who has been working with us in the WTO, UNEP and UNEP Secretariat have been a long-standing partner with the WTO. We have worked together for a long time on various projects, and we continue this cooperation in a more concrete way now in the context of plastics. So thank you also to UNEP in general for the long-standing cooperation with us. And UNEP from the start was involved in the discussions on plastic and has helped us, helped members really shape this discussion. As I believe the first negotiating meeting under the UNEA process is set to start at the end of next month, could I ask you to share with us your reflections on the importance of ensuring continued mutual supportiveness between the two processes? Ms. Matteau-Flipp, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the WTO and this panel for inviting the INC Secretariat to be part of this side event. And as Mr. Pagham said, we are in a very, very fast race. We have been given 2 years to deliver on a legally binding agreement on plastic pollution, including the marine environment. As we know, the science is very, very, very clear. Plastic currently, the production of plastic is increasing massively. And if we don't do anything now, it will triple by 2060. So it's incredibly important for us to do something. And we're very grateful that WTO is doing so much. And we are absolutely going to be collaborating with, continue collaborating with WTO to help get information on a lot of the work they're doing to our parties, to our member states. I'm sorry, it's not a legally binding agreement as yet. Plastic also, as you know, is associated with the use of chemical additives. It is an issue for human and environmental health. There is also a very, very high link with species. It's lethal to many species, both in the marine, freshwater, and terrestrial environments. Plastics can also alter global carbon cycling, and throughout its life cycle, it impacts on climate change. However, as was just said, there is an economy, currently it's a linear resource inefficient economy, but it could become circular and could have huge opportunities. And I like the numbers, 380 million tons of plastic could, and the trade is of 1 trillion. So these are the kinds of numbers we need from WTO, because you have a trade-facing database and work. So we would love to get these numbers and feed these into our decision making and the negotiations. What we do know that trade is completely part of our cycle. It is of the life cycle of plastics. It's part of the upstream where, from extraction through feedstock, through processing, through, design and production, through distribution, also through reuse and recycling, as well as through consumption and waste management, as you just said. So trade is a very, very important, will be, I believe, a very important part of the as we go forward. So what are we doing in UNEP? The UNEA resolution earlier this year, requested UNEP to develop an internationally legally binding agreement on plastic pollution, addressing the full life cycle of plastic and including in the marine environment. So it's not only about the life cycle, but it's also about the legacy plastic that is there. We convened an
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but suddenly we can't hear you anymore. Oh, she doesn't.
Yeah, let's continue.
Sorry, we can't hear you. Can you hear us? Could someone send her a message, please? Hmm?
Okay, I'll leave you figure it out.
Could you hear
Hello?
me now?
Yes, we hear
Yeah.
you now. Perfect.
Okay,
So sorry.
I'm not sure.
But we don't
I'm
hear
not
you
sure.
very well. Could you speak a bit more loud or closer to the microphone?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit better. Yeah, I think it works. So I think we
Okay.
missed the last minute of your intervention. So sorry about that.
Not a problem. Sorry from my side. It's all this technology. I'll just quickly go through it. We have a legally binding, UNEA requested UNEP to develop a internationally legally binding agreement. We are starting this process from end of this year. We will convene five INCs, and we are supposed to complete by end of 2024. So we will have one this year, two next year, two the following year, and this will end with a diplomatic convention in 2025 to adopt the meeting. The INC that will be later this year will start with a multi-stakeholder forum, and I hope WTO is attending that. Finally, our plastic pollution documents refer very much to trade. So I invite you to go online and look at our documents and see how your members can interact with our negotiators to ensure that there is, some discussion on trade during the INC discussions and on the legally binding agreement. From the WTO, we would love to get some science-informed policies. How do we improve data gathering on trade? How can we get this information fed into the negotiating body? How do we look at the international trade across plastic life cycle? I love this survey because we would love for that also to feed in somehow into the INC. We would love to engage with you on and collaborate with your stakeholders, including the businesses that interact with you, the NGOs and academics. Trade-related technical assistance, capacity building, information and exchange sharing, as I just said, would be very, very important for us. And finally, the international legally binding instrument can also play a key role in providing a framework, targets, guidelines, and focus for cooperation. I'm sorry I speeded up, but I wanted to get my information across before I am cut off or anything. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. Very clear, and we couldn't hear you very well. Thank you so much for this very interesting remarks, and for highlighting some of the areas of cooperation with WTO, where we can try to have provide you and help also with the process that you are leading, in particular, as you highlighted on trade flows and trade policies, and indeed in the context of the survey that is being carried out by the group. So thank you very much for this. I would like now to turn to our third speaker, and Mr. Rolf Paet, who is the Executive Secretary of the BRS conventions, Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions. Thank you very much for being with us. Dr. Paet was also yesterday for the opening of the Trade and Environment Week, so we really much appreciate his availability and his dedication to our processes here in the WTO. And we also, with BRS, we have a long-standing cooperation on various trade and environment issues. So we work together already for a long time with Mr. Paet, of course, and his team, and so it's very much appreciated. Dr. Paet, Mr. Paet, trade in plastic waste is often the first contact that many people have when they look into the issue of trade and plastic pollution. So the idea of waste is what comes up first. Could you share with us the state of play of the plastic waste amendments to the Basel Convention, and how do you see the process at the WTO contributing to efforts to ensure such trade is sustainable? You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Okay, good morning to you all, and another great weather in Geneva. So I hope we have time to enjoy some of the last sunshine that we have in Geneva here. As mentioned yesterday, the Basel Convention is important and it's fundamental to the issue of trade. The problem is, in the past, we've not been thinking about it that way because we've been busy focusing on trade in nice products and stuff. So we've not been thinking about the reverse of this when we generate waste, and seeing the waste as something that is not something that is subject to trade. And in fact, the transboundary movement of waste has been going on for many years, and is a result of some of the problems that we have today with, for example, the issue of plastics. Is we have huge amounts of waste which is circulating around the planet in containers, and as I said yesterday, both legally and illegally. And because the countries don't have sufficient capacity to deal with those wastes, they are dumped in landfills. And when they go into the landfills, we have children and, of course, adult scavengers who enter those landfills and try to retrieve those. And I don't know whether you're aware, but in some communities, they use, for example, the plastics and the other types of waste and burn them as a form of energy to cook for food. And you can Google that on YouTube. You know, there's many places, for example, in Southeast Asia, where they actually use waste as a fuel, and they burn it without any protection at all, and they cook food from those types of waste. So waste themselves, without us, labeling it as a resource, is already being used as humans as a resource. And I think this is important to really take home today. Now, when it comes to the Basel Convention itself, as you know, we had the amendments to the Basel Convention, which dealt with the issue of plastics, which we call the plastic amendments, which for the first time actually started to list the different types of plastics. In everybody's mind, I mean, people, consumers, they all thought that all plastics were created equal. And for those of you who are chemists, and for those of you who also work in probably customs as well, know that not all plastics are created equal. In fact, there are several thousands, and at the last count, 140,000+ types of plastics. And these different types of plastics fulfill numerous roles, from now clothing, computers, furniture, aerospace, you can go, and they have plastics in them. Even in agriculture, in all the sectors, there's extensive use of plastics, as they are very versatile and they can be used for a wide range of uses. And of course, when we look at the amount of plastics that is currently recycled, we see it's 9%. It is shocking because we could do more. But as I mentioned yesterday, we can also not look at recycling 100% of the plastic, because quite a high proportion of the plastic as well that we produce have got contaminants in there, have got additives in there, have got coatings, and those cannot be recycled, because what we are doing essentially is recycling those toxic contaminants and additives back into the consumer circle. And what's worrying is that some of these plastics can also be recycled into children's toys. And while we have great standards for new products to make children's toys, we are now, we are very emotional when we buy for our kids toys that are made from recycled plastic, without asking this question: where is the source of this plastic? What was the original constituents of the plastic that was recycled to make into those children's toys? So these are very important trade questions. And as you can see, a toy made from recycled plastic is already a traded product that you can buy off the shelf. And of course, it attracts an emotional time as we're getting to the end of the year, where we're buying presents for kids. That's why I'm putting this on the table. We are shipping left, right, and center new toys made from recycled plastic, and we don't know, and it's not declared, and it is not put on the label whether this plastic has come from pure plastic, which is not, pure plastic, what I mean is from plastic that has been used but doesn't have the contaminated constituents and has been transformed into toys for our kids to play with. So these are, I've tried to point in some of the elements that come in when we look at trade. So it is definitely a very important trade issue, because increasingly, as you know, many companies as well have started to say, look, 30% now of my products will be made from recycled plastic. Beverage companies have come out and said so. Production companies have come and said so. The key question there is this plastic actually, I want to use the word virgin recycled plastic? Yes, virgin recycled plastic, or it has from there. So it boils down to the point I was trying to make yesterday of looking at it upstream. So can we trace the origin of this plastic? Do we have now clarity from industry, the plastics that they're producing that we will eventually recycle, that it doesn't contain contaminants and additives? So these are very important questions. Obviously, if you're a chemist, you know you can go as far into breaking down those plastics into the individual polymers and constituents and then reconstitute it again. So that's also an approach that is being used by industry. But we need to be aware of those approaches as well. As you know, the Basel Convention is legally binding, which means that it imposes on countries for them to put in place the necessary legal capacity and institutional frameworks to be able to address the amendments to the convention. And the amendments came in force last year. And what we're doing, as I mentioned yesterday, we're now looking at evaluating the state of implementation. And hopefully by next year, we'll be able to tell you whether the amendments are working or not. Now, from the surface, I feel they are working because of the number of concerns that are raised and the number of complaints that are raised. So which means that it is hitting home. And in fact, my own prognosis that it would hit home further upstream or deeper into the whole value chain of plastic production and consumption and disposal. And we've in fact heard from even the petroleum companies who are developing the resins and the things that are the base for use in plastic. So we've heard from them, we've heard their concerns, we've been listening to them, but we've also heard from recyclers and the challenges they have in trying now to deal with the huge amounts of plastics that many countries have now decided. And I really hail the efforts of many large producers of plastics, where they've taken political decision to say we're no longer exporting plastics to countries where we know those countries don't have the capacity to deal with the recycling those waste. And I won't mention the countries here today. I'm sure you can easily find out who those countries are. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to them, because what's happened in the past is because we have been discriminately exporting the plastics, we've not been creating the investment space for national recycling and national implementation of technology, creating jobs for recycling. And what's happening now is many of these countries are now looking at investing in both research and development, but also in creating jobs. So this impact, and again, I'm drawing the links with trade, is also creating national capacities, jobs, technology transfer, technology development for us to tackle this global issue of plastics. And I think, coming from the conversation that we had yesterday about sustainable trade, I think this is a very important element that we need to reflect on and think about, is how do our trade policies also incentivize and promote sustainable technology, sustainable jobs, and that kind of thing, which I feel also needs to emerge out of the issue of plastic waste. As you know, the Basel Convention, I will finish in 1 minute. I can talk until tomorrow morning about this. Under the Basel Convention, the parties also agreed to set up a partnership on plastic waste, and this partnership is actually growing because it provides an opportunity for us to work with the private sector as well as the civil society in coming up with innovative approaches in dealing with the issue of waste. As you know, the issue of waste is a community issue as well as a global issue. And we've seen in many communities that this has created, for example, job opportunities. It has created economic development for those regions in dealing with waste. I mean, there's even a school in one of my case studies in one particular country where the kids are actually engaged in bringing to the school the amount of plastic, and that pays for the fees, the tuition fees that they need to pay. So plastic has become a monetary commodity in that way, as much as cryptocurrency has become, if I can draw this illustration. So we have a huge range of partners, over 130 partners in the partnership, and it's growing. And we have in the big industries, I mean, the big ones that we know who are big generators of plastics, as well as the small ones. And it's really interesting when they're focusing on the various aspects of managing plastic waste and really bringing forward the issues that illustrate the complexity of dealing with the issue of plastic waste. And I would just want to finish now with something that has come, especially from, and I'll always bring in the small island perspective, is now a lot of shipping companies are too scared to transport waste, because of course of the problems that have been kickstarted with the plastic amendments and all the other instruments that have been put in place. And as a result, small islands who don't have the capacity to recycle waste, because as you know, recycling plastic is high energy. You need volumes, you need constant volumes. And in small islands, you don't have these kinds of a constant supply. And they are stuck now. And I have some of these islands calling me and says, what do we do, Rolf? The ships don't want to take our, and here I'm talking about a few containers, right? I'm not talking about hundreds of containers. And what do we do with the plastics? Because we are stuck with it now. So in a sense, we have to also solve that issue with the shipping companies, that they also feel comfortable that what they are carrying, they know what they are carrying, and they know that the destination to which they're carrying those wastes will go into a proper facility for recycling. So let's not forget about the shipping industry, because I think they play an important role in trade, but also we need to give them the assurance in developing the framework and the systems that what they are carrying is also going to be something that they can feel responsible for as well. The other point with the shipping industry is, as you know, we've had a number of incidents dealing with plastic pellets, and the notable one has been off the coast of Sri Lanka, and the other one in Norway, in the Atlantic, where we've had a lot of these pellets that have, through heavy seas and whatever, dropped into the oceans. And suddenly, instead of seeing sand, you see plastic pellets. Yes, and they are very difficult to pick up. I mean, can you imagine You know, you have to be, I saw a documentary that these kids design a robot that is like a hen. It plucks, you know, the hen that picks up the seeds to pick up the individual pellets. And here you're talking about billions of these pellets. And IMO, I know now, is looking at how they can regulate the transport of those pellets around the world, because they are the primary raw materials for converting into plastics. So because they were not being packaged properly, because they were not being transported properly, these huge environmental impacts happened with those pellets. So these are, I hope I've drawn in some of the linkages that we share, you know, the Basel Convention shares with the trade community, and I hope that will stimulate the discussions and the exchanges this week. Thank you. Well, I'm ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payet, and thank you so much for your, as always, very passionate way of sharing with us your expertise. And indeed, you highlighted extremely clearly the need for cooperation on different grounds, so that it's not a simple way of simple problem, but there has so many ramifications and components to this discussion that we need to take into account. And thanks again for bringing bringing out the importance of the shipping industry and cooperation also with them. I think it's a very important point that we should keep in mind for future work here. Moving on to our next speaker, Mr. Ricardo Trevino Chapa. I hope I pronounce your name well. I'm not a Spanish speaker, I apologize. Mr. Chapa, so Mr. Chapa is the Deputy Secretary General, of the World Customs Organization. WCO is as well an organization with whom we are cooperating quite a lot in different committees, of course, in the World Trade Organization, but also in recent years, so very much in the context of plastic, but also in the context of more generally of the Committee on Trade and Environment. We have worked we have benefited from the expertise quite a lot in recent years. Also back in the days when there were discussions on environmental goods and services, there were also quite a lot of input we could benefit from WCO. So I thank you for this long-standing cooperation also with the WTO. Mr. Chapa, back in June, the co-sponsors of the dialogue on plastic pollution issued a communication to the WCO pledging their support to your efforts to better identify material flows of plastics and asking the WTO and WCO secretariats to enhance their technical cooperation on this topic. I believe DDG Pogam, in fact, delivered to you the communication personally in Brussels during your first Green Customs Global Conference, and technical cooperation between our secretariat is actually very, long-standing. We have worked a lot together, as I was mentioning before. Could I ask you to share with us some of the challenges and opportunities in this topic that the WCO believes international cooperation could help address? Mr. Chapa, you have the floor.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Ludivine, and good morning to everyone, to colleagues here in this panel, to everyone present and online. It's my pleasure to be here. First of all, start by congratulating WTO Secretariat on organizing this Trade and Environment Week, which is really important and fundamental for progressing on this important discussion. And indeed, DDG Pogam was in Brussels a couple of months ago, where he delivered as well very important and productive participation on what WTO is doing on the environment. And this was within the margins of our first global conference of green customs. During this conference, we had very important results on the way forward. Just this year in June, our council, which is the top decision-making body within WCO, approved the new strategic plan for the coming years for our organization. And within the focus areas. There were 3 focus areas that were defined for this period, and one of them is precisely green customs. So we are definitely focusing our efforts on greening customs procedures and contributing to the greening of supply chains. Now, within the letter that, of course, we welcomed and we received, that was delivered personally by DDG PAUGAM, we continued because, as you have just said, this is a long-standing collaboration, WTO, WCO, but we continue and we reinforced our efforts on this aspect regarding the combat of plastic pollution. And we have identified as an early first phase, an early stage, 3 main aspects to be worked on together with our Harmonized System Committee. The first one is to better identify the single-use plastics. So we find opportunities within the work that WTO is also doing, and how we can use the dialogue mapping of trade-related plastic measures in order to identify how members of WTO are already identifying these single-use plastics, and how we can introduce this into the work of WCO within the Harmonized System Committee. Of course, we have to see the Harmonized System as a toolkit in this aspect. Last night I had the opportunity to discuss with some colleagues here, representatives from several members at the WTO during the opportunity that Ambassador Manley from the UK gave us last night to discuss within his leadership with some people on the work that we're doing at the WCO, and some of them were asking me, how are we going to use the HS for this purpose? Well, the HS is a toolkit that we can give you the opportunity to classify to a 6-digit classification of each of the products. It depends on each national policy and strategy to further classify it or leave it at the level of 6-digit, and it also will belong to the country to decide how to use this information. If you can really develop trade policies that foster use of biodegradable plastics, this would, of course, I think, be one of the most pragmatic and consistent steps towards fighting plastic pollution. So how do we start by developing these policies? By correctly identifying the problematic plastics. So one of these co-actions that we are following together, WTO, WCO, is first the identification of single-use plastics. The other identification of plastic, and this was also now addressed a little bit by Jean-Marie, is the identification of hidden flows. And we are talking about this plastic that is embedded in goods or as packaging. So we're discussing on how to use these product identifiers and how we can use related technology like barcodes or QR or so on, so that we can better identify the plastic content of certain goods, but specifically including their packaging, which is potentially it should be based on sectorial benchmarks or average plastic contents of certain goods, but with the support of some leading companies, of some governments, we can now start really building a database that would allow us to have some average numbers on the plastic content of certain goods. Now, these product identifiers should consider, of course, that not only the content, the embedded content of plastic within the goods, but when there is a process of export, import, there is, of course, additional packaging, normally pallets. It has been already touched upon as well by Rolf, and these should be also identified and evaluated within the work done by customs at the borders. The third element of problematic plastic identification is, of course, those plastic alternatives and substitutes, the recycling content that should be also easily identified. So in regard to this, to the plastic alternatives, we have to do a proper technical assessment with experts that need to identify these alternatives and include them within our harmonized system to foster trade policies and control. So again, the HS should be seen as a toolkit, as an assistant in order to develop these trade policies. With these three initial broad identification of products, we are starting on this project. Of course, we also have collaboration with within this dream team, as it has been already, with other international organizations. We work very closely as well with Basel Convention on the plastic amendment that was effective as of January last year, and on the launch of the new negotiations that was also addressed by UNEP. Because at the end, whatever the results of these negotiations, it is most probably customs administrations who's going to implement these negotiations. And it is, of course, of high importance for WCO and for our members to be a part of these negotiations, to be part of these discussions, in order for the results to be feasible to implement them at the operational level. We also, as WCO, are working on capacity building of our members and in joint operations. We have put in place our Asia Pacific Plastic Waste Project at this point, which initiated in 2020. And this is aiming to strengthen the capacity of customs administrations to mitigate and appropriately respond to environmental threats. At this point, focused in Asia Pacific, and focusing especially on the implementation of the Basel Convention, specifically on matters related to plastic waste and the illegal shipment. We are also having international global joint operations with our membership. We have 184 members, as you might know, and within these joint operations, we have usually an annual operation that focuses precisely on the illegal flow of plastic waste, among other aspects within our environmental portfolio, like also combating the illegal flow of endangered species, so fostering also for caring for wildlife and other aspects of the environmental portfolio that we're handling. But okay, going back to the plastic pollution, which is the aim of this of this panel and this meeting today, we really are focusing as well on how to leverage on data. So by really having this process of identification, we would have enough data as well in order to take decisions at the operational and at the policy level. So we are also fostering within our data strategy, which is another of the focus areas that is within our strategic plan for the coming years, how to make customs capable of collecting, analyzing, using this data in order to advise governments, advise trade, advise policymakers for a better identification of goods that are endangering our planet and how to protect better our environment. So I would leave it at this point. Other aspects that we're working as well is in developing some research on how we can contribute on circular economy, and this would, of course, with the aim of tackling and trying to assess the life cycle of that plastic that is being reused, as highlighted as well by Rolf on this, and how customs can contribute to this aspect, and how we can better engage with circular economy, which is quite a big challenge. But I'll leave it there right now, and again, thanks for the participation, for the organization of this panel, and thank you for really arranging this beautiful weather today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the weather is because of Environment Week, obviously. It's a good omen. Thank you very much for this very interesting remarks, and I think it highlights very much the fact that WCO, WTO members must work hand in hand, and I would say, to use a different expression, in a life cycle type of approach. So from the beginning, in finding the right data and sharing the right data, and working together to identify the HS codes, and then, as you really rightly highlighted it, to the end of the process, with in terms of implementation, as you said, custom officers will be the one to implement whatever result is being agreed on in the context of the dialogue here. So thank you very much for this, and I would like now to turn to our next speaker, he was the Director of the Office of the Secretary General and Chief of Staff of UNCTAD, Mr. Pedro Moreno. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Moreno. So UNCTAD's work on mapping the trade flows of plastics and identifying related gaps in information has been quite essential to informal discussions here in the dialogue at the WTO, in particular in its early stages. So thank you for this cooperation from the start. Since then, WTO and UNCTAD secretariats have been increasingly cooperating on other aspects of the topic, including on plastic alternatives and substitutes. Quite a lot of work that has been taking place in this context. Could you please share with us your perspectives on the importance of taking into account trade and sustainable development aspects in the global efforts to address plastic pollution? You have the floor.
Thank you, Ludivine, dear colleagues, querido embajador, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Really, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for arranging and organizing this Trade and Environment Week, including the nice weather. I agree. And then, you know, and for showing how important it is now to have bigger and stronger coalitions when it comes to issues that are so key for economies and for sustainable development. From UNCTAD's perspective, we can say that much is at stake for trade and environment when it comes to plastic. Plastic trade is big, is very big. The total value of global plastics exports is around $1 trillion US. And putting this into perspective, this is 4 times the value in 1995. Today, it represents about 5.3% of total trading goods, and many people, jobs and industries thus depend on that trade. But the environmental cost of plastics and plastics trade is also big, as has been said here earlier. Plastics can destroy environmental assets and affect ecosystem services such as oxygen. And not only is this of great concern for the health of the planet, it also affects the economic value and opportunities like fisheries. That is a key area of work also in UNCTAD. Plastics trade contributes to plastic pollution. About 75% of all plastic produced becomes waste. There are literally mountains of wastes. In countries that lack waste management capacity, these plastics end up all too often in our environment and oceans. Plastic pollution is a significant threat to our climate as well. As the plastic sector uses fossil fuel and chemical inputs, it contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions and environment and health concerns. Should we not take action, this will be an increasing threat. And as it currently stands, greenhouse gas emissions from plastics are projected to increase 4-fold from 2015 to 2050 and reach 15% of the global carbon budget by 2050. The problem is that our economies and societies function with plastics. Plastics are found in almost all industrial value chains. What we need is trade, trade and development policies and negotiations that help addressing the plastic pollution challenge and advance transformation to more sustainable trade and economies. In other words, we need a green and a blue New Deal. Such deal must include various elements and considerations, and from our perspective, let me highlight some. First of all, multilateral trade rules should ensure that national regulations, bans, taxes, and other mechanisms meant to tackle plastic pollutions are set in a fair, non-discriminatory and transparent manner. Second, trade negotiations should contribute to incrementally phasing out fuel subsidies that lead to low prices for primary plastic. This would give more market space for natural material substitutes and alternatives, and of course, it would also support renewable energy sources. In terms of trade policy, lowering tariffs and non-tariff barriers for plastic substitutes would help scale up their production and deployment as well. Tariff lines for plastic substitutes and alternatives should be defined and extended so countries can act upon them, facilitate trade of substitute materials and products, and de-incentivize trade of single-use plastics, as it was said here before as well. An issue is that related import tariffs are often high in large developing countries. This may be a missed opportunity, and so lowering these tariffs could encourage greater South-South trade in plastic substitutes. Sorry. Market access initiatives, on the other hand, could be pursued unilaterally, bilaterally, regionally, plurilaterally, as well as multilaterally under the WTO precisely. This could be part of a broader environmental goods liberalization package, such an environmental goods agreement, for example. There is no doubt that we need plastic substitutes, non-polymers materials, and alternatives such as biopolymers. That is clear. They can make an important contribution to address plastic pollution as they are all biodegradable, compostable, or recyclable. They offer a means to reduce plastic pollution by up to 20% by 2050. Moreover, they create new jobs that are on top of that, sustainable jobs. Case studies that we have conducted in UNCTAD in Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia show that, indeed, many plastic substitutes have a much better environmental life cycle performance and much lower emissions than single-use plastics. But there are some exceptions, notably glass and aluminum. The good news is that most of these substitutes and alternatives are already available, have benefited from innovations that are scalable in production, particularly in developing countries. But developing countries need support to improve trade and domestic governance to promote plastic substitutes and alternatives, increase material recovery, recycling capacities, or raise taxes to fund waste management. A good guide in this transformation process are the circular economy principles: reducing consumption, reusing materials, recycling, and conducting sound waste disposal. Ladies and gentlemen, these are all areas of work that have become central in UNCTAD. We have invested heavily in producing a plastics trade database and have scaled up our analytical work on trade in plastics, plastic substitutes, and alternatives. And we offer venues for discussing the related challenges and opportunities. And in this sense, by the way, I would like to invite you cordially to the event on plastics trade that we are co-organizing at the COP27 on 10th of November. Trade and environment cannot be discussed in isolation, as this coalition and this panel is proving. All too often in the past, this was the case, but we have moved on, hopefully. That is why we are here today. We need the expertise and creativity from both areas to find solutions for the sustainable future we all want. And thank you again, and look forward for the discussion. Thank you, Ludivine.
Thank you very much. Very informative in the notes and points you made here. It really illustrated the broad range of activities and work that UNCTAD is carrying out on this topic, and it explains also why we, WTO and members of the IDP, have been cooperated with your organization on so many fronts, because there is indeed a lot of expertise that can be benefited from. So thank you very much. I would like now to turn to our last but not least, as we say, speaker. Indeed, the coordinators of the WTO dialogue on plastic pollutions have played a major role in the way the discussions have evolved since the last 2 years, and have been very, very active and working very hard, I must say, on this topic. And Ambassador Valencia, who is with us today, is one of these the coordinators, and who has also worked very hard on this issue, of course, together with his colleagues. So I would like now to hear from you as leading one of the delegation leading the process at the WTO on plastic pollution. Ambassador Valencia, if I could ask you to share with us your views on the importance of international cooperation to ensure trade policy and the WTO play a positive role in supporting efforts to address plastic pollutions. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Ludivine, por la introducción y también saludos a los amigos y colegas que se encuentran aquí en esta mesa y quienes nos están acompañando, sea aquí en la sala de la Organización Mundial de Comercio o también en línea. Y el diálogo sobre contaminación por plásticos es una iniciativa, como bien lo ha señalado Ludivine, que congrega a varios estados miembros de la OMC. Ecuador es uno de los coordinadores. Quisiera mencionar que los otros países con los que compartimos este honor de coordinar esta iniciativa son Australia, Barbados, China, Fiji y Marruecos. Con Ecuador seríamos 6 en total. Pero la iniciativa tiene ahora 75 países y sigue creciendo en número de adherentes. Recientemente se ha incorporado México, Samoa y Mauricio a trabajar y aportar con sus conocimientos, con su ímpetu, con su energía a un objetivo común. Porque es un objetivo común el que todos tenemos, evidentemente eso nos une, puede ser un poco redundante el repetirlo, pero es útil recordarlo porque forman parte de esta iniciativa países que tienen un distinto tamaño de población, un territorio también de diversa magnitud, los países mucho más grandes que otros, que son bastante pequeños. Algunos países son insulares, otros son países continentales y, como había dicho, ocupan un gran espacio. También el nivel de desarrollo económico relativo de los países varía. En términos de su biodiversidad, algunos países son muy biodiversos, otros tienen situaciones, incluso desafíos en materia de desertificación. Todos, creo yo, y no escapamos ninguno a tener retos de nuestro desarrollo sostenible a futuro. ¿Por qué hago esta desagregación? Simplemente para mencionar que el tema de plástico que nos une a países tan diversos, simple y llanamente es una manifestación de una situación, de una problemática, de un desafío global, del cual ningún país, bajo ninguna circunstancia, puede verse excluido. Todos tenemos algo que hacer, algo que decir, algo que aportar y definitivamente aportar de una manera tal que conduzca a entendimientos, acuerdos concretos y efectivos. La preocupación, y en esto el tomar, como siempre se dice al final la palabra, le releva a uno de repetir intervenciones y datos muy apropiados que han referido ahí, empezando por los que nos dijo Jean-Marie y también los amigos de los otros organismos internacionales. El ciclo de producción del plástico no se limita, como muchas veces se llega a pensar, a un consumo de un producto acabado de plástico. Hemos visto a través de estos datos y de estas explicaciones que nos han dado cómo abarca desde la producción de las materias primas hasta el desecho, el manejo de los desechos plásticos. Cómo estas distintas fases de los procesos productivos se multiplican en algunos casos por 10 o por más de 10 pasos diferentes, ¿no? Pero en todos esos pasos, si vemos, o en casi todos, está involucrado el comercio, el manejo o el movimiento de esas mercaderías, de esos productos, de esos elaborados, de esos materiales a reciclar o a desechar a través de actividades comerciales. Actividades comerciales también en gran medida internacionales. Hay un comercio local que atañe al plástico y un comercio internacional. Por eso precisamente la Organización Mundial de las Aduanas tiene algo muy importante que hacer y que decir en esta materia. Y por cierto, la Organización Mundial de Comercio, que es una entidad multilateral que atiende precisamente asuntos, temas de comercio que conciernen a todos los estados miembros de nuestra organización. Se menciona siempre esta cifra que es impactante, 5.5% del comercio internacional, $1 billón, en inglés es $1 trillón, $1 trillion. En fin, pero la OCDE incluso prevé que hacia el año 2060, estamos hablando de 40 años, esa cifra se va a triplicar, es decir, la importancia de comercio de plásticos en el futuro va a seguir creciendo. Eso evidentemente nos mueve a que sigamos nosotros trabajando con esta orientación dentro de las organizaciones, en este caso multilaterales, y la Organización Mundial del Comercio. La IDP, la Iniciativa de Contaminación por Plásticos, quiere poner su parte, quiere hacer su parte, pero estamos muy claros que somos una pieza de este rompecabezas que debemos todos juntos armar. Y en esta pieza está, por cierto, dentro de nuestra organización, la Secretaría, que juega un gran rol apoyando a la iniciativa, pero apoyando otros temas de nuestra agenda de lucha contra la contaminación con plásticos, pero también a las instancias específicas de nuestra organización, porque finalmente lo que los países impulsemos en esta iniciativa deberá en algún punto derivar, añadirse, sumarse a la agenda que tienen las distintas instancias de decisión de la OMC. Saludo aquí la presencia del embajador Simon Manley de Reino Unido, quien es presidente, por ejemplo, actualmente del Comité sobre Comercio y Medio Ambiente, una de las instancias a las que con toda seguridad mucho de nuestro trabajo en algún momento también va a conectar, y ya lo ha hecho de todas maneras. Así que esto refleja esta conexión que todos tenemos y el interés que debemos seguir cultivando para que nuestros esfuerzos se concreten por esas vías. No debemos perder de vista, se ha dicho aquí, de hecho tuvimos la presentación de la secretaria designada por la UNEP para el Comité Intergubernamental de Negociación del Programa de las Naciones Unidas sobre el Medio Ambiente para la negociación del instrumento vinculante sobre contaminación por plásticos. Se inicia esa discusión ahora en el mes de noviembre. La primera reunión va a tener lugar en Punta del Este, en Uruguay. Creo que todos nuestros países están, de hecho, involucrados y estamos trabajando en el otro, en el foro específico, que es el foro de la UNEA, el foro de la UNEP. Fue un acuerdo al que se llegó de iniciar este proceso en marzo de este año, marzo del año 22, y ciertamente los países que estuvieron, uno de ellos, muy de cerca en impulsar este proceso en la UNEA, somos también quienes estamos preocupados por impulsar el tema aquí en la OMC, ¿no? Eso eso no nos debe sorprender porque somos los estados, tenemos distintos puntos de trabajo a nivel multilateral y debemos manejar y debemos impulsar que esas conexiones multilaterales efectivamente se materialicen en trabajo. Así que evidentemente nosotros damos la bienvenida a la conexión que ha existido entre la Organización Mundial de Comercio con UNCTAD, con OMA, con los convenios de BRS también que hemos estado trabajando para buscar juntos una vez más tratar de poner todo este rompecabezas junto y que nos va a tomar tiempo y ciertamente es un tiempo bien empleado, pero que no debemos bajar la guardia para empezar cuanto antes a seguir impulsándolo, ¿no? Unos 4 puntos finales que me gustaría destacar. En primer lugar, reiterar nuevamente la importancia del aporte desde la perspectiva del comercio a los objetivos multilaterales, en este caso de lucha contra la contaminación por plástico. En segundo lugar, tener presente siempre que es un tema de distintas manifestaciones a nivel nacional e internacional y que debemos, por tanto, buscar soluciones en esos 2 niveles. En tercer lugar, que debemos también ir pensando ya, de hecho ya ha habido algunos esfuerzos en ese sentido, pero en aterrizar, en llevar nuestros respuestas a programas específicos, ¿no? Programas específicos que, por ejemplo, esta no es una lista exhaustiva, enfaticen o trabajen en el desarrollo de normativa y reglamentación a nivel nacional. Ya tenemos el proceso del instrumento vinculante internacional, también es necesario desarrollar esta normativa comercial y no comercial dentro de cada país. En segundo lugar, no solamente quedarnos con las normas, que son, ya sabemos, importantísimas y básicas, pero buscar la regulación efectiva y el control de las autoridades competentes. Y hablo autoridades pensando no solamente en autoridades nacionales, sino en muchos casos en autoridades locales, que son las más eficientes y efectivas de llevar a cabo o de implementar decisiones que se toman en materia de preservación del medio ambiente, de control de la contaminación. Luego, por supuesto, creo que es un gran reto y es una gran oportunidad, que se ha dicho aquí, fomentar la sustitución por materiales que eviten el uso especialmente de plásticos más dañinos para el medio ambiente y para el ser humano. En esto, el apoyo de los especialistas, de los técnicos, es básico, es clave, ¿no? Como en todo programa complejo, va a haber o se requerirán establecer prioridades, trabajos que vayan a buscar atender esas situaciones en orden de primero las más urgentes y luego evidentemente otras que no las sean tantos. Pero para eso mismo se requiere, por cierto, toda una planificación y programas específicos multilaterales y locales. Y luego, ciertamente otro punto importante, estos programas es de materia de manejo de desechos, que no voy a abundar más porque se ha manifestado aquí las distintas ramificaciones que hay en esta materia, lo delicado incluso del tema que puede ser, pero ciertamente por ese mismo motivo es un tema que debe requerir una atención de la comunidad internacional que sea efectiva y una cooperación con los estados que también sea efectiva. Un último tema que he dejado para el final, creo que todos vamos a reconocer que es un tema indispensable y es el diálogo constante sobre esta situación, sobre esta materia, sobre esta problemática con la opinión pública. En gran medida estamos donde estamos por una gran conciencia internacional de actores, de personas individuales, colectivos, escuelas, organizaciones no gubernamentales, gente que promueve temas ambientales, en fin, que han creado esta masa crítica de conciencia a favor de una causa que nosotros buscamos. Pues eso no debemos descuidar, debemos más bien promover, buscar que sea mayor y que ya no solamente se manifieste en cuanto a reconocer la preocupación que existe, sino en apoyar la causa y los programas y los proyectos que se lleven adelante. Ese es un momento que hay que impulsar de manera sistemática, de manera activa, una vez más internacionalmente, también a nivel nacional. Termino con una nota, por supuesto, que no es una nota negativa, todo lo contrario, es muy positiva, creo yo, pero además muy práctica. Todo esto va a requerir recursos, todo esto va a requerir muchos millones de, pongan ustedes la moneda que quieran poner para calcularlos, pero son recursos específicos que tienen que venir de los estados, del sector privado, en fin, nuevamente es un afán de colaboración. Son recursos que, por ejemplo, tienen que suplir necesidades de algunos actores vulnerables a nivel, digamos, nacional, pero también internacional. Países que van a surgir, especialmente en vías de desarrollo, de manera muy particular o sufren ya el impacto de estos problemas ambientales. Países que tienen dificultad, por ejemplo, en procesar desechos plásticos porque requieren tecnología, porque requieren financiamiento, etcétera. Me parece que esto es algo básico que tenemos que tener en consideración y, por supuesto, con recursos viene la voluntad política que requerimos todos añadir a fin de que esos recursos se materialicen y el programa en general también pueda llegar a un buen puerto. Bueno, corto este momento, ya sabemos, sé que estoy sobre el tiempo, me he gustado añadir algunos asuntos adicionales, pero fundamentalmente esta es una visión que modestamente ofrezco como uno de los coordinadores de la iniciativa. Ciertamente la iniciativa va a continuar con los países que la conformamos. Tenemos ese compromiso de seguir impulsándolo en el marco de la OMC y ciertamente en la relación de la OMC con otras organizaciones internacionales de otros ámbitos de la esfera multilateral. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And no, I mean, you were certainly not too long. Thank you so much for this pep talk. I think it's very important coming from the coordinators to have this kind of impetus from you, and that's very was a very good message, I think, also to try to really have these discussions also really linked to the reality and to the national considerations. I think it's an important part of what needs to be done, and of course the nerve of the war, as we say in French. I don't know if it's a good translation, but resources is indeed an important part. So thank you very much for this. So I'm aware of the time, and as moderator and in addition working hard on this Trade and Environment Week, I have to set an example and not go over time. So I'd like to thank you all very much for being here today. Thank you to the co-coordinator for having me moderate this event. I was very happy to be able to help you facilitate this discussion, and also a big thank to the team, to the environment team, who helped support this event and make it possible. So thank you very much to everyone, and see you in other events in the next couple of days. Thank you. Thanks to Peter.